It feels as though we are turning a corner in this pandemic, and we certainly hope that continues. But how about our local economy? So to talk about that, give us some perspective on that, Professor David MacPherson with Trinity University, chair of the economics department there, here to share some insight with us. So Professor, thanks for your time, first of all, and let's talk about where we are right now. Is our local economy showing similar signs of recovery? And we look at the numbers of cases. How about the economy as well?
Yeah, the economy is certainly recovering. It's had rapid growth, particularly in the industries that have gotten hit in the worst, and that'd be leisure and hospitality. And an area that's done even better is retail trade. And in the second half of this year, I think it's going to be even stronger.
Where are we at compared to, I guess, what maybe your expectations are? Have we weathered this pandemic better than maybe you thought? And do you expect the stimulus checks that people are arriving daily will have a positive impact on San Antonio's economy?
Absolutely. I definitely think it's better than I expected a year ago in March. And it's recovering fast for a variety of factors. The Federal Reserve made a big intervention in terms of the money supply. The federal spending helped a lot, including the Payroll Protection Act. And also, the people made adjustments in firms rapidly in response to the COVID. So it's definitely better than I would have thought a year ago.
We know that San Antonio was hit hard in terms of unemployment, job losses that we saw when the numbers were so high. We had all of those shutdowns we were enduring. Is that looking any better? Are people getting back to work?
Absolutely. There's been really rapid recovery in the industries that got hit the worst. And the industries that hit the worst were retail and leisure and hospitality. And both of those sectors are recovering. So I think all the money that people have getting and the stimulus checks in the past and in the future checks will lead to even greater spending, particularly when the COVID concerns are reduced.
Are you in any way, for lack of a better word, waiting for the other shoe to drop? I know that the San Antonio Report did a story, a few weeks ago with bankruptcy attorneys that said they're not seeing the number of bankruptcies that they thought they would, which seems good on the surface, but they're worried that we're going to see a wave of them come at some point. Do you think there's another shoe that's left to drop economically, or in what you've been looking at, do you feel like we've weathered the worst of it?
Oh, I think we've weathered the worst. In fact, I think it's going to be a really strong second half of the year as the vaccination rates increase and all the stimulus spending out there and an extension of the payroll protection program. I think it is going to be a very strong economic growth in the second half of the year.
That's great to hear. I'm curious what you think about consumer habits. You've talked about spending increasing the further we get into 2021, but do you feel like people's habits are going to be changing now that perhaps people aren't having to save as much because they're back to work? They're feeling more secure about going out, being around other people with vaccination numbers as well? Yeah,
there should be a shift in spending. There was a big increase on good spending over the last year because people couldn't go out to restaurants, movie theaters, and do travel. And as people can do that, there'll be a shift away from goods towards travel and restaurants, et cetera.
What are the parts of this economic sectors that you're most concerned about? I mean, does it go beyond hospitality and travel? I mean, is that an area you're concerned about, and areas that have maybe done better than you would have expected through this pandemic?
The ones, I think those sectors are clearly recovering, and they're the ones that got hit the worst. One sector that got hit that maybe people didn't realize is the government. They lost over 1 million jobs in the government sector, as well as education. And I think those industries also, particularly education, is going to come back when people can feel safe to be in close quarters.
You shared with us that you've been doing some research looking at all of the data in terms of the economy throughout this pandemic. Anything that really has surprised you when you've been crunching some of these numbers?
Well, one of the things I've been looking at is the effects of the minimum wage and what states did better and what states did worse for leisure and hospitality, since that was the worst hit industry. And what I've found is that the states that had the lower minimum wages fared better during the COVID recession than those that had the high minimum wages. And I think it's because those higher labor costs made it more difficult for restaurants, particularly to stay in business.
All right. I love the rosy economic outlook that you've given us. Professor MacPherson, Trinity University, chair of the economics department. Always appreciate your time and your insight. Thank you.
Well, thank you.